Disarmament Conference 1932 to 1934 had been a long time in coming. The League of Nations was supposed to set up disarmament from 1919, but they'd only really had two preparatory meetings in 1923 and 1926 to discuss what they would discuss at a disarmament conference. Now, never really was going to be a disarmament conference because nobody was ever going to disarm. It was going to be an arms limitation exercise. And by 1930 they got what they wanted to discuss ready, but it still took another couple of years to actually meet. So they met in Geneva and they discussed offensive weapons, getting rid of offensive weapons. Now that was difficult to decide what an offensive weapon is. As somebody said, it depends which side of the gun that you're standing on as to whether it's offensive or defensive. With battleships that had been quite easy, and then there'd been the Washington Naval Agreement and the London Naval Agreement deciding what to do with battleships and cruisers and making ratios on that. More difficult with land armaments, and proved to be impossible because the French, who wanted security, and the Germans could not agree, with Britain trying to make some sort of deal between them, but partly because of the contrast in their two, the incompatibility in their two viewpoints, that proved to be impossible, and also the fact that the British Foreign Secretary John Simon was quite irritating and not very good. So when Hitler came to power, he left the disarmament conference pretty much straight away. I mean, for 2 more years Britain tried to get him to come back, and he made promises like he tended to do, and it gave him excellent cover while he was getting underway with his rapid rearmament after he came to power. But by 1934 the French realised that he wasn't going to come back and blew the whistle on the conference and pulled out as well. So it was pretty much over by that point, and at that point Britain realised they would have to start making bilateral agreements with Germany in 1934, but obviously weren't ready to do so until the Anglo-German Naval Agreement in 1935. You can see the French point of view. They knew that Germany was a bigger country with more of a population now, and the only thing that was stopping them being more powerful than their neighbour France was these the Treaty of Versailles clauses on armaments. So at a time of depression, where you might think that countries would want less armaments to save money, the French were thinking that it was an atmosphere like Manchuria is a good example, where countries are more likely to invade, and they'd seen what had happened in Manchuria and the League failing to deal with that effectively or at all. So they thought that it was even more necessary for them to have this security and have the upper hand in armaments. The British, MacDonald, pinned massive hopes on the conference, and they were under the terms of the 10-year rule not wanting to spend a lot of money, and because of depression didn't want to spend any more money on rearmaments, unlike other countries who use the depression as an excuse to go out and take over countries. The British were hoping on the League of Nations, goodwill and enlightened opinion, like the spirit of Locarno in the 1920s. Unfortunately, that was a misplaced optimism in that. So Churchill obviously was against disarmament. He was wary of Germany rearming and wanted the British to rearm alongside Germany. Britain would not guarantee itself as a defence. Well, Britain would not guarantee to defend France if Germany invaded, or give it any more guarantee than they'd given at Locarno, and this is part of the reason why the French didn't want to disarm. If Britain had done that, then maybe there would have been some sort of agreement at the World Disarmament Conference, but they didn't have the army really to back that agreement up, and also they were more worried about their empire than guaranteeing French security. So it's the second big blow to the League of Nations in the early 30s after Manchuria. and it's the start of appeasement, really, in that from that point onwards Britain's decided not to have a war, and if the League of Nations and disarmament is not worked, then they will have to do it themselves, which ends in the Anglo-German Naval Agreement and other appeasement strategies. So because Britain had the view that Germany had just grievances and should be allowed to rearm, they followed that policy by appeasing Germany.